Welcome to Jung at Harp. I'm Kathleen Wiley, a Jungian psychoanalyst in North Carolina, and I am here with Deborah Henson-Conant, a composer, coach, mentor, and extraordinary harpist. We both play the harp, and that's why we call this Jung at Harp. This is episode 112, and today we are going to talk about when to give up and what to give up. And this is a question that we have, and each week, or almost each week, DHC and I come together not with answers, but with a question that is perking for us around our life, and we imagine maybe perking for some of you all. And we want to explore it and see what ahas we might come up with together. And we are on YouTube where you can leave comments. So sometimes we get to see those while we're live, sometimes we don't. But if you are watching live, please feel free to join in comments, and we love to include you in the conversation too. So when to give up? DHC, do you want to start?
There's so many parts of that. And one of the parts came out of an exercise that I took on this week to give up trying to fix everything in my life. And I noticed that just sitting at my desk, that things get messy. Things seem to get messy. And I get so drawn by those that I'm feel that I should be taking care of them. And I have this sort of underlying sense that there must be something wrong with me if I can't figure out what goes where. And years ago, when I moved into this house, there were many things wrong with the house. It's an old house, and I couldn't walk through the house because there were so many things to fix. I was thinking about them the minute I would walk through. And finally, I just couldn't handle it anymore. And I took a Post-it note and I wrote in big letters on each of the things I wasn't able to do: not fixing this hole. I am not cleaning this porch. I am never going to fix this hole in the poster, whatever it is. And I put those up, and then I was able to walk through the house with peace. And I just let it go. And it was clear to everybody, I am never fixing this. This porch is going to be like this forever. And then one day I just was like, oh, I'm going to spackle that hole. And I spackled the hole. Oh, I'm going to clean the porch. But I did it without the anxiety that I should be doing something like this. And so recently I thought, I'm just going to take 2 minutes a day, look at my desk and say, I am never putting away those cough drops. I am never going to get all my pens to always live in the pen container. I am never going to have a desk that doesn't have a couple dirty dishes on it. This is how life is. And I find that gives me enough peace to be able to do my work. And for some reason, it takes the charge off of having to take care of these things. And I'm just going to take a third thing here. So I'm doing something in my life that I've been struggling to do for the last 50 years or 45 years, whatever, which is this story that I had to bring it out into the world. And so often I felt like that wasn't happening. The one thing that I came here to do, I was not doing that. And in that arena, now it's happening. It's coming out. It's going to be a film. People are going to be able to see it all around the world. That is completely resolved. It's completely different. So in that case, I never had that sense of giving up. My persistence was there always, but it was a heartache, a lifetime of heartache of what I wasn't doing. So here's my question. Did giving up open up the possibilities of those things resolving, or did the persistence in not giving up, was that at play? How do those two play with each other?
I think the operative thing is they do play with each other, that there is this dance between that desire, that holding on to, and the letting go of a specific way of doing it or timeline of doing it or how to do it. I mean, as you were talking, part of what came up for me is how I can so pressure myself And the pressure kicks in with, I should be doing this, or I'm not doing what I want to do. But there's this pressure. And when you were describing just putting the notes around your house that said, I'm never going to do this, it's like you were taking the pressure off. You were
Right.
saying, okay, no, I'm getting out of that vice grip. I'm just not doing it. I'm not. And there's something about the giving up of the pressure of the
Mm,
should that I think is key to allowing the dream to have its own trajectory to unfold. That sometimes we impose with our shoulds things that actually box up and bottle up the energy of the thing, the dream, the thing we feel called to do, the thing that is our life's work. So I don't know if I know I'm talking several
well,
things, but
before we got on, you said something and you just made me think of it again, which was, are there certain kinds of pressure that do enable us and certain kinds of pressure that disenable us? And
yeah,
I noticed that the pressure to do it well, it has to be done well, or I should, that pressure doesn't actually help. And as you were talking, I was thinking, well, if I'm having a guest over to my house, there's a time pressure there. They're coming at this time, and I will often quickly do things because I'm not thinking about doing them perfectly. I'm just like, what would make it look like I'm the kind of person that has a neat house? Well, this is, and so I don't actually have to become a person that has a neat house, which is never going to happen, but I can look like I am for a little while. As you were writing, I wrote down, and I don't know that I hold to this, but never give up, always let go. And
mm,
I don't
hmm,
know, but and I also got to say that it's not up to me. I can let go of these things. It's not like I'm holding them together.
right, right. And I'm thinking about how one of Jung's theories is comes out of actually the scientific theory of the conservation of energy, that energy is never lost, it only transforms. So let's just say this childhood dream, this call you had, the
Mhm.
musical, the story, getting it out there. I'm imagining along the way, you had different ideas, or maybe you didn't, about how it might come into the world. But as you let go of those, the energy was still there. And so there is an energetic thrust that is like a pressure from within to move forward. Sometimes I talk about it and experience it in my own life. It's as if the self, the larger self I am, the divine essence, is pushing me forward or pulling me. More often, I think it really is, I'm just being pulled towards something. And all I know is I'm compelled. The energy is there. And yes, my ego may be dancing with it and setting goals and doing this or doing that, but the energy is from somewhere else. It's not ego generated.
Well, how can you
And
tell? How can you tell when it's ego generated or when it's not?
it really is the felt sense in my body. This is why I do the embodiment circles. There
Aha.
is a qualitative, nuanced difference of where I feel it in my body. And there's the other difference is whether or not it feels like there's a fire inside that's a fire and energy that's moving me forward, or if I'm constantly having to stoke the fire. Often for me, if it's ego driven, I'm having to constantly stoke the fire, which means that it's taken a lot of effort to keep myself motivated, to have the energy to do this or that. Whereas when it's that fire from within, then it's like I can't not do it. It begins to happen. I find outlets for it. I get the resources I
Yeah,
need.
so that's really interesting because I'm thinking about the difference between sort of deflection and like, okay, watching Netflix or watching cat videos or whatever like that, versus saying, I'm not doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And and observing that when I'm pretending that I'm doing it, but I'm actually, doing something else, that doesn't open anything up. But when I actually say, okay, I'm not doing this,
Right.
and I walk away, there seems
Mm-hmm.
to be something about the walking away, whether it's the emotional walking away. I know when I go for a run, things open up, new ideas come.
Well, all that energy that's been spinning, oh, I should do that, or look at me, I'm a bad housekeeper, or whatever, all of that gets caught in that derogatory self-talk and that constant struggle of, I should do this, oh, I'm not going to do it. All of that energy is then freed up when you walk away, when you say, I'm not doing that, when you get clear that this isn't the time for that, and it's done. There's something about energy that's then freed. And I think it is an emotional energy, and emotional in that it's how we feel about ourselves. It's how we it's a mental energy, and that it's not only how we feel and are experiencing ourselves, but it's also the valuing of ourselves and our self-image. There is an energetic or spiritual quality in it, and that this energy is no longer just on the gerbil wheel going round and round and round.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking, and by the way, I got this tape on my, I don't know if this really works, but if I'm really worried about what's on my cheek, that's what's on my cheek is my microphone. It's making me think that when I'm asking members of the academy or students to do something, and they're like, I can't do that. And I say, could you do a really bad job? Could you do a terrible, terrible video that's like, and they're like, well, yeah, I can do that. And I totally get that. And it makes me realize that makes me think it's not that I can't do something, but I cannot do it the way that I conceive of it being okay to do.
Yeah. And this is back to the when to give up and what to give up.
Right.
Is giving up the idea of perfection, giving up the idea that there's only one right way, giving up the idea that it has to be the finished product the first time out. You're always saying that when things are born, they're slimy. And you are often saying in order to be good, you have to be willing to be bad. Right. And in a way, what you're saying is that anything is a learning curve. We all start out not even able to turn over in our crib, and then eventually we can crawl, and then eventually we can walk. Well, along the way, there are lots of quote failures, unquote. There are lots of falling down on our butt, and so if we kind of get it, and when to let go, I think is when to let go is of any time we get perfectionistic about something.
Now, what if others get perfection? So yesterday I shared something in a situation where I shared some work that I've been trying to do to find a problem, and I've been struggling with it and using all different kinds of tools that I don't usually use. And one person said, oh, there's such easier way to do that. And I was just like, ouch, ouch. I'm sharing my efforts. It's painful to think that, oh, a better way. And I just wasted hours and hours of time, and without even asking, how did I do this and what did I do and stuff like that. And I'm running into that a lot. And I feel like I have no, I just fall apart, and then I just don't want to share anything. And I think, look, I'm even stuttering talking about it. And I don't know, I'm sure I'm not the only person who has this experience, and I don't want to shut down. Right. So how, I see we've shifted quite a ways from when to give up, but that's what conversations do. What to do about that? Like, I know someone said to me, I just heard this the other day. Somebody said, having salt water thrown on you doesn't hurt unless you have an open wound. Yeah. So I'm aware that this is, this might not be a problem for other people. It's not like someone's punching me in the stomach, like literally. Well,
most people that I know and see in my office and have for the last 30 plus years have some places where it is the open wound where they feel less than.
Mm,
And so when that person said that to you, I'm imagining it kicked in the less than wound.
mm, mhm,
And, and then whenever we are judging ourselves or comparing ourselves, or other people do that when we're
mm.
vulnerable, then it hurts. And I think when to give up, I mean, you could at least say, ouch, let me just say that. And I don't know if you said ouch out loud to that person or not. It sounded like maybe you did.
Yeah, but probably not as clearly as if I'd actually said ouch, which would have been, I think, more direct and
Yeah, I'm remembering when I got my previous dog, Raven, who was a rescue and a skipper key. So they're very much in charge. Their nickname's Little Captain, and I had no idea. She was a rescue Pomeranian skipper key. And I remember reading one of the puppy training books, and it said, if your puppy bites you too hard, you just squeal out. And I thought, oh, what a novel idea to squeal if someone hurts you. We're trained not to. We're trained to be contained and make nice and pretend it's okay. When to give up and what to give up. Let's give up being nice when we're hurt. And that doesn't mean we're going to attack back, but we can say, ouch. We can squeal however we squeal. And, there are places, particularly in professional settings, where the way we do that is to say, wow, that didn't feel good, or I wish I'd known that ahead of time. Or, well, can I tell you what I did and you show me how to do it differently, or whatever. I mean, or maybe it's someone when we finish this project, we don't want to work with because they're just harsh. I mean, there are a variety of responses one can have. But what to do, I think, first of all, is to really give up any idea you've done anything wrong, or that you're bad because you did it differently, or that you're less than because you did it differently. And unfortunately, sometimes we give up on ourselves and our dreams because we really need to give up judgment and comparison that causes us to feel less than.
right. As you're saying this, I'm realizing that as we do start, putting ourselves out in the world, others, theoretically, with the best intentions, are going to be giving advice, unsolicited advice and critique. And it might be helpful for me. I'm just trying to think of like what it would be helpful for me to have in my pocket, to be able to. So first of all, what you said, just being able to say, ouch. And then, I mean, I was so shaken that I just, so, and it's especially a problem if I'm with people who I need to protect. So I'm like, oh, now I should be protecting them from me, but I'm trying to protect me from them. And, so, all right. So you said the first thing, so here's what I'm hearing. And this is really interesting because it reminds me of walking through the house and being assailed by the thing that you think is wrong. And that is, you may not be able to do something in the moment when you get assailed by that.
Right.
But you can do things ahead of time. Right. Like by putting those signs up, I was in a sense putting a Band-Aid on or something. I know you have someone coming to your house. Did they just arrive? And
they just arrived. So I'm going to mute myself for just a minute and grab
okay.
TV.
Okay. All right. So Kathleen told me this, that when someone arrived at her house, she was going to have to grab the dog because he was going to be barking. So I'm just curious. I don't know if anybody's listening to this at the moment. And now we have a dog in our midst. I'm just curious if this is resonating with anybody else, if you have this experience and what you do, if you are sharing something vulnerable and the response is advice or unsolicited advice, or some sense that you've done something that they know better than you. when you're really being vulnerable about showing something that you're trying to do. And one of the things that I noticed is that often people think they know what you're trying to do, and they jump in with advice before they've actually asked the question of what are you trying to do? What are you trying to get here? What did you actually do? And then giving some kind of positive, like, oh wow, wow, the picture looks great, or or saying something positive. Okay, now I feel like I'm stuttering again, and I just want to like shut everything down.
Well, but I as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about something that someone who's helping me on my book project that my embodiment circle grew out of said to me that in the moment she said it was just like a dagger in the heart. And I'm aware of how that actually stopped me in my tracks for a little while, how it actually did like, oh, and what she said is true. I mean, not everybody's going to want to read my book. I mean, her statement, it wasn't that she was being malicious in her statement at all. Her statement was a true statement. But in the moment, because of my own vulnerability, there was something about it that just, it was like, I don't know, a door in me slammed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the key of what to do in that moment and when to give up is somehow, I don't know. I couldn't articulate in that moment what I felt. And it took me weeks actually to realize the impact it had. And sometimes that's just the way it is. It takes the time that it takes. And when we're on a deadline working with people, which I'm imagining you might be with the situation you're talking about, then sometimes we just have to do the best we can in the moment to say, okay, I'm going to move forward. If we can get to the seed of what it triggered, then we can begin to put some salve on it. Like for me, it was like stepping back to say, okay, this is not an indictment on what I'm doing. This is just a reality check on the audience that I'm going to be targeting. That's all it was. It wasn't. And I think, we all get, when it's our dream, then it's a part of us can feel as if, then everybody's going to love it. It's going to speak to everybody. Well, guess what? It's not. and that was kind of the reality check. And it actually, as a result of that, after a few weeks of my kind of processing, I got really clear. I got clearer about how I want to pitch the book and how I want to position it, and where I can see it fitting into the marketplace. So it was like what I needed to give up was this illusion that this great thing, because it was great for me and inspiring for me and all vista expanding for me, was going to speak to everyone, because it isn't. And I'm repeating myself now, but there's something I think about it sometimes when we get feedback, once we can put the salve on the part of us that feels less than, then we can step back whole. With our whole self, we can step back with the valuing of what we're doing to be more grounded in reality. And yeah,
I'm as you're speaking, I'm thinking of, how many people have given up on sharing so many things in their lives, or how many people have given up on being able, or how many people have just thought, well, I guess I'm just not good at this, because it's so interesting because I can see that we're both struggling literally to speak, because this is such a vulnerable topic, and because it's not just something we're talking about or exploring, but it's something we're struggling with in ourselves in getting our work into the world. and in getting, who we are into the world, and what it has to get past in ourselves, and what other people, the barriers in ourselves, and then and then how other people inadvertently add to those barriers, and when to give up what, and how to give up that. Like, could I give up being getting triggered by unsolicited advice? I'm not sure. So what do I build around it so that I actually don't have to give up on whatever it is, that heart of the thing. So I've been trying to write this show, for 40 years or whatever. I never gave up on the heart of it, but I had to give up so much. I had to give it up so many times. And I certainly don't know what actually happened. Well, I do know what happened. I do know the pressure that I put on myself is that I actually put money in the game. And, I signed on to do it in New York. I put money in the game. I couldn't get that money back. And that was the thing that opened up the next part of it. Left to myself, I would have pulled out of that and walked away.
Yeah, now we're back to a question you posed early on. It also is like, what's the pressure that's helpful pressure,
Right.
and what's the pressure that isn't? Because of course we know there's a pressure that pushes us out of the birth canal,
Right.
and we need that pressure to get out in the world. And that was what you're signing on the dotted line and putting money in the game.
Right.
That was the pressure to birth the project. And we need that sometimes. I mean, we need deadlines. We need investment. I mean, that was an investment, not just it was a financial investment, but it was also an investment of your integrity. It was an investment of your heart. It was an investment of, your dream. And so,
right. And I've seen it in even little ways. I know in the academy, we have these half-baked projects and that lead to then final beginning projects.
Mm-hmm.
And the half-baked projects have a deadline, but they're also supposed to be bad. You're just showing the idea. Right. And then the final beginning projects, there's a deadline, and that's the deadline. And that helps people. And it also helps people to know this is the beginning. Do this project so that it opens up what's going to come next.
Yes.
And I will say that, I'm often afraid that what I do is going to close down what comes next. And then I shut down, I give up. I would rather live with that sense of like, well, what a great potential, than to get it out there and realize, okay, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Putting it out there, it means that there's something there. And now it's my job to go find the people for whom it's going to be meaningful.
Right. I think that, again, when to give up and what to give up, it's not necessarily that we need to give up our dreams, but what we need to give up are some of the illusions we have around our dreams and how it's going to affect other people.
Right. And I just realized something. So I had an assistant who I really loved, but it just wasn't working out. And it's been always very hard for me to let go or give up people. But I was able to do that, with love, and almost immediately got someone new who was just as lovable, and it's working. And I'm very aware that that it was the giving up, as much as I love this person, the giving up of it that allowed the next thing to open up.
Right. That's right. Because when we hold on to something that's not working, there isn't room for what can work to emerge.
So when to give up? Yeah. How do you know what to give up?
Yeah. And again, I believe, and for me, for sure, it is not an intellectual process.
Right.
Although the intellect is involved, but it is much more a gut knowing. And so it really has something to do with being true to my energy and where my energy is in the moment. And, there are some things, and again, I'm thinking about the golden cage, even though it might have been shelved for decades, it never was shelved. It was somewhere, it was still very alive in you. And I'm just circling all around, and I'm thinking about how much shame blocks us, and
right.
How much I think when to give up and what to give up. If we're giving up out of shame, that's probably not the time to be giving up. If we're giving up out of a place of centeredness, where we are seeing the clearer vision that this is not the way forward, that's a different experience.
Well, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about relationships. Like, I've always had a very hard time giving up, letting go, walking out of a relationship. And so I've maintained relationships much, much longer than they were healthy. And they may have not have been healthy to begin with. And so, and I think I was stuck in the shame. Like, I was thinking, there's something wrong with me. I can fix that. And therefore I can, I can make this work. So there was that making it work, and there was the shame and all of that was holding me into that cage. And so what would happen? I mean, I'm just wondering if it's true that we're here and we have what we have and we're here to give what we have, then in a sense, it doesn't matter what we give up. If we could give up everything over and over and over again every day, and the thing that is us is going to come through. I don't know.
No, I think that's very true. And the alchemist, in alchemy, there is a process of where, the sense of who we are dies. So the new sense of who we have become emerges. Angelus Arian used to say it, that our ego is often in jet lag to who we really are, that we have this idea of who we are, but there's a reality of who we are that we have to let go of the ego ideal in order to be who we are.
Okay. All right. So in 3 minutes, how to do that? Because I love that. I mean, I was just like, give up the sense, the constrained sense of who we are. Now, I get it. That's a lifelong thing. But what are some things in our last, 5 minutes? What are some things we can do? Because I have it that this was the question we were coming towards from the first question.
Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to say is to take a baby step on your life stream. Whatever your life stream is today, if your life stream is to have a certain car, then make yourself a vision board with the car, or whatever. Take a baby step on a life stream. For me, I find that when I break down practicing Harp 20 minutes a day into 5-minute increments, I'm much more consistent about practicing 20 minutes a day than when I hold this idea I have to sit down for 20 minutes at one time. Baby steps. So that's the first thing. Take a baby step to whatever your life stream is, or what your heart's desires is in this moment. The second thing I'm going to say is to make a list of a fulfillment list. Make a list of all the things you've done that you feel good about. That when you think about those things, or in the moment you were living into those things, that you felt the largesse of who you are. So make a list of those times, those things in your life. And then the third thing is humanize shame. Developmentally, in Erik Erikson's model, autonomy versus shame is the developmental stage from age 2 to 4. Shame is a normal human emotion. The problem is when it becomes so toxic, it annihilates any sense of self we have, our autonomy, because our autonomy is from the sense of self that we have. You went into that meeting yesterday with the sense of self of, okay, this is what I've been able to do. This is how I've done it. And this person's response hit in a wound where you felt annihilated. That wasn't what they intended, I'm sure.
Sure.
But it was, and so when we feel that annihilation, it is clue to us that some arena of monstrous shame has been triggered, and that shame needs to be humanized. And how do we humanize it? We ground ourselves in the present reality. We contextualize what's going on, again, given the current reality. We have compassion toward that part of us that was annihilated between 2 and 4, because it happens all the time. All you have to do is go out to a restaurant oftentimes and listen to people with children, and you hear it going on. And it's not that people intend to do that, but it's one of the unfortunate byproducts sometimes of socialization. And, there's a lot that's been written on shame and how to respond to shame. And so you can get some of those books and work with that material too. But I think for all of us realizing, as long as we're human, sooner or later, we're going to have moments of shame. The key here, though, is humanizing it. And so that we don't keep getting pulled back into history, history where we were annihilated.
Right.
Yeah. So,
wow. So those are really powerful. And I'm thinking about specific people, meaning when I have something, to think about who is the person I've created this for? Who's the actual person in the world that I've created this for, and try to find it. Or if I could think more sort of spiritually and think, if I was given this, who was I given it to give to? And it reminds, and to give up that a certain person, that any certain person or group of people, that I need to prove myself to those people by having them approve of or like or whatever. But just to observe, wow, if that's the response to this, that's probably not my audience. And by audience, I don't mean, it can be an audience, but I mean the person to whom you're going to share. And it reminds me, when I was touring in Germany a lot, I would get flowers, after the show a lot. And we were on tour, so I'd be in this tour bus, and, there wasn't really any place to have the flowers. And so I would go out for a walk the next morning with the flowers. And I just walked around until I saw the person who I thought needed those flowers. And I would go up to them and I would explain, and I sounded charming because I could barely speak the language. And I would be like, I'm a musician. I'm here in town. I got these flowers. I'm on tour. May I give them to you? And almost always people would accept those flowers. And it felt wonderful. It was really a beautiful thing. So I'm thinking that taking the time to just really understand what it is that I'm giving. And there were times when people are like, no, I don't want the flowers. And I felt kind of embarrassed, but I would just walk away and find someone else. So I want to think about that. And I also want to think about giving up doing things well and embracing doing them badly. And understanding what I'm giving up the pressure to do it right, and embracing the supportive pressure of there being a time to make the connection. So that is what I am getting out of this question today. When to give up.
And what to give up.
Right. Kathleen, thank you so much for jumping into this question with me. And thank you, everybody, for listening and being part of this conversation, and all the beautiful comments that you send us afterwards, and the times you tell us that you were listening and that it was meaningful to you. And I really look forward to the next time, to seeing you possibly next Friday.